Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Lorenzo Serna. I am the director of tactical media here at the NDN Collective. I'm really excited to invite you to this conversation we're going to be having with Nick Tilsen. If you've been following along, Nick Tilsen is going to, I guess, a hearing tomorrow. We're hoping, all of us here at NDN Collective, and I know probably a lot of you are hoping that those charges are just going to be dismissed. We don't know what's going to happen, but we thought that we would have this live, have a conversation with Nick, sort of catch you up to what's been going on. As you know, this has been over a year now. This case has been dragging on, and there's been what we're seeing as a prosecutional misconduct, some civil rights violations, it seems like, and we wanted to unpack that for you to be able to see it for yourselves. And also maybe let's talk a little bit about the NDN Collective itself, because I think we're doing a lot of work here, and sometimes we get lost in the work, as you know, and we're just doing it, and we don't really tell people what we're doing. And so I'm hoping that we can take a little bit of time to talk about the work we're doing here as well. And right now I'm going to bring in Nick Tilsen and just have him introduce himself. So Nick, here you are.
Hamadaki api, Nick Tilsen amachi api. Chantea washte nape chuzapalo. Happy wash day. Good evening, everybody. My name is Nick Tilsen. I'm Oglala, Dakota. I'm calling into this call from my home here in the Pahe community here in the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, home to the Oglala Lakota people, and excited to be on this conversation to talk about the work that we're doing, but also the unfortunate charges that have been brought against me that I've been fighting since July 3rd of 2020. It's now 2021. And and excited to unpack it a little bit, because as you know, our work here at NDN Collective is about building Indigenous power and dismantling white supremacy and changing the conditions in which we organize as Indigenous people. So I'm fired up to be on here this evening with Lorenzo.
Yeah. Thank you. The first thing I actually wanted to do is, if you do, contact us, if you're in the email thread with us, we actually have a manifesto video. It's at the end of all of our email threads. It's about a minute long, but in there we talk about NDN Collective. We talk about, what we're doing. So I thought maybe we'd watch that together and then have a conversation with Nick to unpack sort of like that conversation that we share every time we send an email, so people understand what we're doing here. So here we go. Here's the video. It's about a minute long, and we'll be right back.
How long are you going to let other people decide the future for your children? Are you not warriors? We are unapologetically, unabashedly NDN. United like never before, we rise together, arm in arm, to equip all Indigenous people with the tools needed to become the architects of our future. Through a holistic approach to infrastructure, funding, capacity, movement building, and philanthropy, we are fostering a world of justice and equity for all people and the planet. If we want to transform the world, our vision has to be as great as the challenges we are faced with. It's not time to come from a place of fear. It's time to come from a place of power.
So defend, develop, decolonize. So that was the manifesto video. It's 1 minute long. It's at the end of every email thread, And in that video, if you're listening, there's some captions there as well. We talk about how at the NDN Collective, we have a holistic approach of infrastructure, movement building, philanthropy. And those are a lot of big words. And I was wondering if maybe you could sort of explain how that breaks down into the ecosystem of the NDN Collective, and sort of to elaborate to folks out there, all the different parts of our organization and how they're trying to approach these things that we mentioned.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, those are all big words for sure. And, to break it down in layman's terms, NDN Collective is a movement building organization, and we believe in changing the conditions in which we organize as Indigenous people by changing the power structures, and to make sure that our movement is resourced the way that it needs to be, that our communities are invested into for the long haul, and that the cornerstone of our whole philosophy is around this concept of Indigenous self-determination, that when we actually meet the needs of Indigenous people and invest into Indigenous self-determination, it makes a more just and equitable world for all people in Mother Earth. And so we do that through a variety of different ways. We have We have a grant-making arm of the NDN Collective that gives grants to organizations, to tribes, to collectives, to nonprofits. In fact, we give grants to however Indigenous people choose to organize themselves. And so we're agnostic. As long as people are being accountable to their community, we want to help support the work that they're doing and doing the work of defending, developing, and decolonizing. And a lot of what we mean by that is like defending air, land, water rights, and community. Developing regenerative and inclusive economies that are based in Indigenous lifeways and values, and decolonizing through our languages, ceremonies, and way of life as a people. And so we have one grant-making arm that does that. We also have a lending arm that provides loans to communities. We go to the banks. We go to the place that the banks don't go to. We go to the res. We go to the hood, we go to the communities that most of the financial world pretty much ignores and forgets about. But at the same time, those things are just extensions of who we are as a collective of organizers, as a collective of storytellers. And so we do frontline organizing ourselves in direct action, ourselves through our 4 different campaigns of the Land Back campaign, the Racial Equity campaign, Climate Justice campaign, and our Education Equity campaign. And then the coolest part that I like about the collective is as we organize, we're actually actively working towards building new solutions. So we don't just advocate and talk about land back. We don't just advocate and talk about education equity. We actually are in the process of helping incubate and start a new school with our partnership with the NISN, the Native American Community Academy, and the Nauka Inspired School Network to build something called the Osheti Shakoi Community Academy. We're also looking at building housing projects, creating job opportunities. So many of the things that we are organizing for, we're also on the front lines of actually putting that stuff into fruition, because we believe that as organizers, storytellers, artists, teachers, grant makers, creatives, that all of us have to come together to actually realize and build that future that we're fighting for. And so NDN Collective both does that, as organizing on the ground ourselves, but we support that work throughout the Indigenous world. In fact, NDN Collective currently is supporting work not only with a variety of different nonprofits in Rapid City, South Dakota, or Mniluzahan, but throughout Indian country. We have over 500 Indigenous partners that are doing amazing work of doing just transition work away from a fossil fuel-based economy to building a new economy, to fighting on the front lines. And so we're this organization that's kind of doing a lot of different things. And that's why I say, we're like an ecosystem organization, and we try to deploy this ecosystem, or might have you a toolbox, to help support Indigenous people and their self-determination, kind of wherever they're at in their fights, in their struggles, and in their creation of something new in the world.
Yeah, and I think early on I was uncomfortable. I was I was joining the Ending Collective. I was at work here. And I was, everyone had these big titles. I have a big title. I'm a director. Holy crap. And I just wanted to say, I was really amazed. It was amazing to see how everyone was just a person. When it came down to it, if somebody needed help with something, the titles went away. It was just how do we help each other get through these moments? How do we help each other in this and that? And that to me was really an incredible experience for someone who is coming into an organization who comes from a place of always trying to work in a flattened world where everyone's looked at as equals and looked at as we can take on the work of each other if needed. And then we know, it was really comforting, to see that. I think I mentioned that once, I was in a room and I said that, and it was because it meant a lot to me to see that regardless of all of this titles and stuff, it comes down to it at the end of the day, we're giving away a bunch of backpacks to the community, and somebody has to run to get something. It doesn't matter if someone can do it, they're going to do it. If it's you who's going to do it, CEO and president, you're going to go do that to help out, and to me, that's been one of the greatest things that I have really enjoyed about being here. It's just that everyone just is such a person. They are in the community. And I think that's what, to hear you unpack all that, that's what I think about is when I'm here at the office, when I'm here in Rapid, everyone's in the street doing something. Like they're working in the community. You know, like sometimes there's nobody in the office because they're out doing just community work. And I think that that's a different feel that I think people may get sometimes from watching what we're doing here at the NDN Collective. It is true that everyone's a person, everyone's working in their community, everyone's working on the tasks that they're doing to like liberate and get people to self-determination. And it's really amazing to witness. You know, I just wanted to say that as somebody who's here, you know, and who is coming in. You know, I come from, like I said, you know, the grassroots frontline world, and we have a lot of worry about a space like Indian Collective. I won't lie, but to be here and see how everyone is just really just themselves and really passionate about the work they're doing, and they're pushing so hard that it's been an incredible experience. I just wanted to say that. Anyways, that's just me talking.
I wanted to rip on that for a second. I mean, I think this is the thing too, right? So we are Indigenous people first.
Yeah.
Our nonprofits are our tools, however we decide to organize ourselves to do resources, whether it be collectives, our nonprofits, our businesses, our, you know, all these different things. At the heart of it, we're Indigenous people first. My title of who I am as a Oglala Lakota Oyate, member of the Oglala Lakota Oyate people, you know, that's who I am first. Before whatever title I am in some organization, you know, that is going to live on, you know, forever. And so that's the thing I always like to value about what we do, right, as an organization, and is that we value human beings first. Yeah. We value who we are as Indigenous people, the relationships in which we bring to communities, and we bring those relationships into our work, just like in any movement at any place. It just that so happens to be, we decided here at the collective to build a variety of different tools to help change the conditions and help our people and our communities navigate these really big challenges that are facing our people. And at the end of the day, somebody's allegiance to their tribe, their dedication to their community is forefront, and we have these tools to our disposal to use that. And I encourage people across Indian country to think about their to think about their organizations and their nonprofits or whatever in that way, that we're Indigenous people first. Therefore, you know, we just use these mechanisms as tools to achieve, you know, justice and liberation for our people and our communities.
I want to bring it back a little to the video. In the video too, we say we'll reach a world of justice for all people in the planet. You know, and so like our work is very focused on the self-determination of Indigenous people, but I'm curious how you see us getting there as a way to help reach a world of justice for all people in the planet.
Yeah, you look at, you know, Indigenous people, you know, often this is talked about in the climate movement, where you got, you know, 80% or 70% of the biodiversity that's left in this world, that's fundamental for fighting climate change and protecting the environment, protecting the people. 80% of the biodiversity that's left on this earth is left in the hands of Indigenous people. And it's because Indigenous people have been long stewards of these lands. And that's why this land back movement is so important, right? It's why this movement is so important, because as we reclaim our lands and reclaim our power, it is fundamental that we do it in a way that that fights for Mother Earth and everywhere that Mother Earth is throughout this entire world, along with supporting Indigenous people that are doing the work of fighting for Mother Earth in all of these different realms. And so, you know, whenever the people that are most impacted by the challenges that we're faced with in society, and the more that those folks are supported, then we end up seeing a paradigm shift that's happening. And I think that's why, you know, what's good for Indigenous people is good for all people. And it's like, to me, it's like this sort of thing that I prayed about the other night, that I even pray for our enemies. The reason I pray for our enemies is because the very future that we're fighting for is for their children too. And therefore, like, we're fighting for a better world for all people in Mother Earth. And when things get better for Indigenous people, they also get better for all people. And I think that rings to be true. You know, if the environment is protected, if equitable and community wealth is being built, you know, it's going to be better for all people in Mother Earth. And I think that's one of the fundamental cornerstones of who we are and what we're doing. And so we do that through our ecosystem in a variety of different ways.
Yeah, for sure. I totally, obviously I vibe with that. I'm like in the collective, but I always look at the fact that we do hold all of that land, and we hold it, the biodiversity and the importance of it. And I always look at sort of the ideas from the other end, like, mountaintop removal, like we're going to blow the top off this mountain, progress, or we're going to, like, in Utah, they're scraping the earth off, or the tar sands, right? They scrape the top off of the earth and they dig it in, progress, and yeah, so it's nice to think that, we can be in partnership with these places instead of just in domination all the time. And yeah, I don't know. I think that that's something that we offer is like an understanding that we're in relationship with these places, and it isn't that we are we're the controllers and the mighty. Like, we're actually like in conversation with the land and the water, and trying to like understand it so we can live together with it. And I think that that's probably needed for the future. So I do want to move us into the trial. Is a trial, is a hearing? How are we?
It's a hearing.
It's a hearing.
I have yet to go to trial a year and a half later, which is part of the reason why we're going to this hearing.
Cool. So we're going to cut to a different scene here. We're going to look at if you look on Instagram right now, we actually posted a timeline here. So I'm going to read it through. So everyone who's out there, if you want to go to our Instagram and Indian Collective, you can also see this. We'll see how this works. Boom. Okay. So you see here, timeline of Nick Tilsen's case. This is going to be a beautiful moment where I read the words. Let's go. So on July 3rd, 2020, Nick and 21 other land defenders arrested for protesting Trump's rally, which violated multiple treaties requiring free, prior, and informed consent before entering the area at Mount Rushmore. That was July 3rd. On July 5th, there was a hearing. July 5th, 2020, there was a hearing is held, and Nick is charged with 3 felonies and 3 misdemeanors. Allegedly you're facing 17 years of prison, which is wild. And wow. August 14th, 2020, an amended complaint was filed that increased Nick's charges to 4 felonies and 4 misdemeanors, and he is informed he is facing up to 17 years in prison. February 24th, 2021, State Prosecutor Mark Vargo offers a deal where charges against Nick and all land defenders would be dropped if Nick agreed to participate in a diversion program. Nick agrees to the deal. March 22nd, 2021, Nick has a very positive intake meeting with the Pennington County Diversion staff and creates a comprehensive plan for his participation in the diversion program. March 24th, 2021, in response to media coverage around the deal, Vargo sends inflammatory letter to Tilsen's lawyers arbitrarily changing the conditions of the diversion deal. So after the deal has been made, they have now been changed. Nick is informed the deal is off, and while charges against the other land defenders will still be dropped, all charges against Nick are back on the table. So they dropped everyone else's charges, still decided they're going to continue with Nick. Nick's legal team on March 25th, 2021, reaches out to Vargo to discuss the new conditions for the diversion program. July 2nd, 2021, after months of silence from the state prosecutor, Nick files motions against the Pennington County State's Attorney's Office for prosecutorial misconduct and violations of its rights to a speedy trial and free speech. On September 27, 2021, an evidentiary hearing was scheduled where the motions filed against the Pennington County State's Attorney's Office will be reviewed and Nick's charges will be discussed. The state requested and was granted a continuance. So the state was like, no, we're going to wait. Let's do it in a month. And that's where we are right now. October 27th, 2021, an evidentiary hearing takes place. So that's tomorrow. That's a lot of stuff. So that's over a year, right? That's over a year of stuff. In that year, there was we're saying there was prosecutional misconduct, and I'm wondering if you can speak to that at all.
Yeah, I could speak to it. I mean, I think here's the reality. Like, these charges were both racially and politically motivated charges to begin with. You have to remember these charges were brought at the time that there was an uprising throughout the country. It was at a time where then, now former President Trump was on his rally, trying to rally up his base, going to Tulsa and then coming to the Black Hills. And so, there was political climate in the space. And just like they have attacked movements all across this country throughout history, when the people rise up, they try to attack many people and try to lodge people up and get them stuck in the courts, try to get them to affect their lives. And so that's what they've done in this particular situation, right? It was a massive embarrassment to the local law enforcement community, to the many of the Republican and conservative folks in the community, that Indigenous people and Lakota people would rise up and represent our discourse and our disagreement with the president of the United States coming into our territory without, the consent of our leaders, on stolen lands. That's what this was about. You have to remember that, like, we are fighting for the return of the Hesapa back to the Lakota people. We're challenging the power structures that exist. And so they bring all these charges, and we couldn't believe. I mean, throughout the whole year, they continue to add these charges on. They continue to delay this all the way to the fact that we're now a year and a half later, and I haven't even been able to see my day in court because of the process. And so the prosecutorial misconduct is when the prosecutor engages in vindictive prosecution. And then vindictive is when they're trying to be vindictive, right? They're trying to make this a personal issue. And so what happened was, after I accepted the deal, and no matter what anybody says, there was a deal, because part of the deal was, I would say, okay, I'll go through this diversion program, and as long as you drop the charges for all of the land defenders, including myself. Well, on the day that I went into the hearing, the charges were dropped for the other land defenders. That's an indicator that there actually was a deal, because why would those charges be dropped if there wasn't a deal? So there was absolutely 100% a deal. There'd be no reason I would go meet with the diversion staff unless that was part of the deal. And I met with the diversion staff there. We actually created a really good diversion program that included me going to sacred sites in the Black Hills, that included me working with a local organization called the Mniluzahan AKA, which means White Eagle Society. That's run by brother Chris White Eagle there on the north side of Rapid, to do good things for the community there. Included, a wide variety of different things. The diversion meeting actually went pretty well. And actually the first call that I made when I got out of the diversion meeting was my brother Chris White Eagle there, and said, I'm gonna have an opportunity to do some work with you, and we're gonna make these charges go away and do some good work for the community in the process of it. Well, then, because of this case, media was reaching out, and so we released information to the media about this deal and about what we were moving forward to. And what happened at that point was the prosecutor's office, Mark Vargo, and the Pennington County prosecutor's office didn't like what I said to the media. He didn't like me expressing my rights to free speech, and then therefore basically began to pull the entire deal back, put whole new conditions that I had to meet, all these other conditions that were not a part of the negotiation, and none of those things that the prosecutor brought up were even in the discussions at the diversion meeting, because they weren't even a part of the subject that we were there to discuss. And so this is why this is prosecutorial misconduct, right? All of a sudden, and then our lawyer, even though we're like, what the heck, our lawyer reaches out and we basically say, hey, we want to, we don't agree with these things. Clearly, you knew that we weren't going to agree with these things, but we're still willing to meet with you. Radio silence. Never did the prosecutor ever even respond. And you have to remember, my attorney is Brendan Johnson, the former U.S. attorney for the state of South Dakota. This is not just somebody we hired down the street. This is somebody who really understands what justice is supposed to look like in the justice system, and basically entirely ghosted us until June of this year, when all of a sudden they said, hey, since diversion didn't work, the charges are back on, let's set a court date. And we were like, hold on a minute. And we dug into it, and it was like, wait a second, they violated our free speech, they engaged in prosecutorial misconduct. And whatever happened to this constitutional right that you have a right to a speedy trial? And so, that was out the door. And so it's like, in the state of South Dakota, when you got the attorney general who last year engaged in a hit and run and killed somebody, and got a misdemeanor, that actually happened. Like, I don't know if people know that, following, Ravensborg, and he's the attorney general for the whole state of South Dakota, which is the highest law enforcement officer position in the state, did a hit and run and killed somebody and got a misdemeanor. Yet we have the Pennington County Prosecutor's Office over here engaging in prosecutorial misconduct and violating free speech violations. And that's why, to me, this case has become about so much more. It's become about not just attacking me, but if you talk to any Native person on the res, in the hood, this is how all of our people have consistently been treated over and over and over. And that's why we're in this. That's why, if you look at the justice system in South Dakota, you are 10 times more likely to be jailed and incarcerated in the state of South Dakota if you're Native than if you're white. That is systematic racism. That is what white supremacy looks like. White supremacy is not the person who follows you around thinking you're going to steal a candy bar at the local store. White supremacy is, why is it that our Native kids have lower graduation rates, more likely to be incarcerated, less likely to ever have an opportunity at higher education? These are like systematic things that are factual, that are truthful. And so that's why this case has become, what is actually on trial here is systematic racism, white supremacy, and injustice. And I think that Native people are rising up everywhere, and we're tired of it. We're tired of these things. And we have seen this all across the country throughout different movements. There's over 200 anti-protest laws that have been created to make it, actually it's probably over 300 now, to make it, to try to criminalize people for speaking their voice and their power. And so it comes back to this age-old fundamental thing of that the Constitution of the United States and the laws which many of these law enforcement officers, prosecutors, attorney generals have sworn oath to, that the substance of the Constitution and those laws, sometimes they're optional. They are optional for some of the people in power, and that has clearly been the choice here. And so that's why a big part of our work is like, we have to continue to fight these things, because that's what it looks like. So that's what prosecutorial misconduct is in this case. It's also directly connected to my right to free speech and right to a speedy trial. If they can do this to me, they can do it to everybody, vice versa. And so we have to be able to organize our people and stand up, because we wanted to be treated with respect and dignity.
That's right. And that's right. I know, like, talking about, you're saying about like the education system and the graduation rates, like this is like a century-long fight for this system, this educational system. I'm a Chicanx person. I'm Chicana movement person, and that's what we're fighting for, was respect and dignity, so our people could go on to higher education, because they weren't being allowed to. They were literally stopping us by treating us like we were lesser, by putting us in positions where we were cleaning up after their staff. And that's what they were doing to us then, and they're still doing it now. We're still in the same place now. We're fighting for the same things. There was a letter, right? There's a letter that the Vargo, who is the state attorney, he sent to the police and the deputy chief. And he wasn't like supposed to comment on the case to other people. Is that what I'm understanding correctly?
Yep, yep. And that stuff's all public information, and it's in the brief
It's right
that was
there.
filed to the court. So I'm not an Instagrammer, but I'm sure if it's on there, it's been exposed because that's part of the brief that was actually filed. And that's actually, that letter was given to us by the Minnehaha County Prosecutor's Office, who has now had to take up the prosecution of this case. The reason why is because now that these motions that we have filed motions against the Pennington County Prosecutor's Office, and they have to sit on the stand, they have to actually have a different county prosecutor's office represent them. And so, whenever you go to court, there's something called discovery, and discovery is the evidence, that is to be discussed in front of the judge. And I just unpack all of these things because, not everybody understands these things. Even me, I'm like,
Yeah,
how do you like unpack all this stuff? But in this discovery, this letter was given to us, and it was an open letter from Mark Vargo to the entire law enforcement community, and there was dialogue between the Rapid City Police Department, between Sheriff Tome and the sheriff's Pennington County Sheriff's Department, with the prosecutor on this case. In fact, the Rapid City Police Department isn't even a party in the case at all, but all this information is being shared. This shows me that these institutions and these law enforcement agencies are in constant communication with each other, and actions that they make are actually influenced by different actors within the system. And this is not right, especially when you look at how much Native people are over prosecuted in these situations. And that's exactly what happened in this situation. The difference is that we're actually putting up a fight, that we're tired of how our people are treated. And whether you're a mother with children on the north side of Rapid who gets harassed, or you're somebody who gets harassed on a simple pullover in town, in your community, you're used to this. And a lot of times our people, we're afraid of the system because we've seen it lock up our people. And I think that as we're fighting to build power in our communities and change the power structures that impact the lives of Native people, we have to speak truth to power here. And when we do, we should be treated with the same rights and dignity as anybody else. Because if we don't hold this system accountable, then who will? Mm-hmm. If we don't hold this system accountable to the very laws in which they are supposed to be upholding, then they will operate with complete impunity. And that's what you've seen in this case. And those are the very arguments that the legal team will make tomorrow in court.
Yeah, and I think too, it's so he sends this email, and there's a whole email thread about it, because your defense is like, hey, this isn't legal, this is misconduct. Again, we're not lawyers, they're the lawyers. I'm reading their papers, and they. I thought it was interesting that in these documents too, there's a point where the prosecutor has asked for information about the case from an outside group, which wasn't within the system, the state system. And he's like, oh, I can't comment on it because it's a pending case. Like, he's well aware that he's not supposed to comment on this case when he gets an email, but within the system of all these people, they're just talking about it all the time. Even when, like you said, the Rapid City Police Department isn't part of the case, so they shouldn't be privy to this information, right? And they're being sent an open letter from him who tries to paint you in a negative light and basically says all of you are right. Negatively, let's look at him this way. Don't worry, we're gonna take care of it. I'm gonna come through for you all, which seems pretty messed up. Like, I don't know. It just seems pretty messed up. And it feels like you're saying that's what happens, right? Like, these people they're all working together. They're all talking about what they're doing. And even when they're not supposed to, here they are in this case, having a conversation.
Absolutely. I mean, here's the crazy thing. Somebody who reached out was actually a program officer from the Macarthur Foundation, who has funded Pennington County for the purpose. This is what's crazy. They have funded the Pennington County Prosecutor's Office and Pennington County for the purpose of reducing the over-incarceration of Indigenous people. That's who reached out requesting more information about what is the relationship. So the Pennington County Prosecutor's Office in Pennington County is being funded by the Macarthur Foundation for the purpose of reducing incarceration rates of Indigenous people, while the Pennington County Prosecutor Office is engaging in prosecutorial misconduct, in free speech violations, in constitutional violations against myself in this case. This is what's crazy about. These are facts, relatives. This is like exactly what's happening. Mm-hmm. And so, when we recognize these things, it's pretty wild. It's pretty wild what happens behind the scenes, and they tend to try to bury you in paperwork and legal gibberish and all these things. But I know what injustice looks like 7 days of the week, 365 days a year. And so does every native person across this country. I'm not going to let no stack of paperwork fool me what's happening here to our community and to our people. And so it's important that we expose this, and it's important that we bring to light on this. Every sort of legal expert would tell me, don't talk to the media, don't go on NDN live with Lorenzo, no matter how badass Lorenzo is, and talk about the case, right? Because you don't want to expose anything. Well, here the thing is, the reality, unless we speak truth to power, they will continue to silence us. And that's part of what's been happening here. They've been trying to silence us throughout time, and try to hang this over my head, and therefore hang it over your head, Lorenzo, hang it over the collective's head, hang it over many of our community partners' head. I mean, this thing has affected relationships in the community. And so, I think the reality is that we have to remember that we have to stick together as Native people, and we cannot let a prosecutor's misconduct or irresponsible sheriff or people that are responsible for overlooking our people to be calling the shots amongst our people. We have to build our power and change the power structures that impact our lives. And that's such a big thing that we're here working to do at the NDN Collective. And we're here for the long haul. I mean, NDN Collective is in this community. We are of this community. This organization did not grow out of some think tank, in Washington, D.C. somewhere. This grew out of the roots on Pine Ridge, and we went to Mniluzahan, and we have been growing from this territory and from the Oceti-Sakowin territories outward to try to create change in the world. And we want to be able to keep doing that, keep fighting for the change that we're seeking in the world. And we are. I mean, we're doing amazing things throughout the Indigenous world, and we're going to keep on doing those things. And hopefully, in the process, we're going to be dismantling white supremacy. We're going to be calling out these power structures, and we're going to be able to, continue to, fight the systems that impact our lives.
Yeah, and we've been doing this now for a year. We've been talking about your trial for a year, and we've been talking to you all out there for a year to show you what we're trying to do to keep our friend out, keep the collective member out, the presidency, whatever you want to say, Nick out of jail. And to me, I have been in this situation before. My friends who engage in land defense and other places, this is where we end up, having to support people for the long haul. And I'm hoping that as we're having these conversations and taking on a little bit, we're taking on risk, like the lawyers said. We're risking ourselves to come out and talk about what we're trying to do. But we know that where you're all at, these things are happening too. People are being sent to jail, being sent to prison. They're being taken from their community. They're being taken from their family. That is a gap. That is a hole that has to be filled by somebody, And that's what's happening to our families and our communities when they get taken into these systems. And so, as we sit here, we talk about what we're doing, our plans. There's people asking for how to help. Everything that we're doing here, you can do where you're at. Like right now, I know the Line 3 fight. It's still ongoing, but it's reached this point where right now all of these people are facing the same thing. They're facing trial, they're facing felonies. They're created by these new laws they're just thrown on there, and so I'm hoping that by doing this, by having these conversations, by having these rallies we've had, that people out there can see it and take ideas from that, and hopefully you can look around and you can show up. Tomorrow we're going to show up for you in court as much as we can. There's going to be a Zoom link. We're going to have a rally we're going to show presence and show that this isn't going to go quietly. It isn't going to be swept under any rug. It isn't going to be hidden from the public what they do. We're going to be there every step of the way to tell you what's going on, and let them know that we're going to be watching and we're going to be acting. And I just want I say that because we're well aware, that this is what happens to us, and the ability to fight back is just based on the ability of our people being able to be there and support us, and us to be able to support them, and having that relationship. And so I hope that's helpful out there, but just know that we do these things, but this is what's going on everywhere. There's in Minnesota, there's a donation link for the legal fund. In Minnesota, there's medics who are helping people with trauma post this. There's a question kind of about that coming up. And so I just wanted to mention that, that we've been talking about this for a long time. We know that you're with us here, and I'm really thankful, and I know Nick's probably really thankful. We're all really thankful for the support, but just know that as we talk about ourselves, we're just trying to example what's possible for other people out there as well, because everyone needs the support. I was in the streets of Ferguson after the murder of Mike Brown. And that's what you heard, was that a lot of those people who were in that uprising had experienced like systemic racism of being targeted by the police, being put in the system, being put in their jails, being fined, and being put in these impossible situations of being able to recuperate themselves from the system, by the system, And so like these fights are ongoing, and they're difficult, and we're trying to unpack this stuff, but it's confusing, and it's confusing on purpose, right? If we can't understand the language, they get to decide what it means, So we do have, to do this little bit of work to try to get everyone on the same page, so we can, move forward and change everything to the way we want, the world we want, Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I just want to say to folks, that are listening out there, to thank you for the support that you've given myself and Indian Collective and the other land defenders, in this process. Because one thing about when the government tries to come after you and they try to over prosecute you, they try to dehumanize you in the process. They try to, make you seem like a criminal before you even went to trial. I haven't even seen a day in court, but they have me hashed up as some kind of criminal when I've been doing, community development in Indian country for 20 years, creating jobs, creating workforce programs, creating opportunities, building housing, building solar projects, wind projects, things that impact the lives of our people, and at the same time fighting on the front lines against some of the biggest corporations in the world who are trying to destroy Mother Earth. They try to tag you with certain things, and I think that a huge part of this is saying, hey, you don't define me. My people, where I come from, on Pine Ridge, Oglala Lakota people in communities that I come from, they define me. My children define me. My family defines who I am. And I think that when we stand in our own power in that way, it's fundamentally important. And I know people have been, worried about things, and therefore been supporting throughout this entire process. And I mean, from the bottom of my heart, to thank everybody who signed a petition, donated $1, took your time out to care what's happening out here. Because out here in West and South Dakota, we are on the front lines of some wicked battles. I mean, there is wicked racism every single day in the streets. Whether you see it on creek patrol, whether you see it in routine traffic stops, whether you see it how people are treated in city council meetings, whether you see it, through over prosecutions like this. And so, we're here. This is our community. This is where we're from. These are our territories. And so we have to stay strong because we're making a way for future generations, so that people don't continue to be treated this way. And so thank everybody out there for following and supporting during this entire time. And big shout outs to the land defenders, the water protectors, the Black Liberation Movement, the Indigenous Peoples Movement, the climate justice folks, the people who are, the young people who are engaged in hunger strikes right now, the people who have been experiencing over prosecution up on line 3 and violence, to all of our relatives in Canada who are experiencing, the wrath of the colonial state of Canada on their communities. I mean, the struggle for Indigenous people's rights is real. And, so we have to continue to support one another and stand up for one another and lean into our prayers. And for me, that's the thing that I'll say, this entire process, never once did I waver from my way of life. And, other land defenders and water protectors and other people who have been experiencing, these same types of things, we'll talk to each other on the phones, we'll send prayers to each other, even in the time of COVID, because we recognize that we're bringing our ancestors into this place because we're continuing on a fight that our ancestors started in the first place. And so, this is real. We are real people taking real risks that are impacting, but every single fight that has happened to this date is a fight worth fighting, whether it be on the front lines of a pipeline fight or fighting for land back right here in the Haisapa. It is absolutely part of what will craft and create a better future for our children. And I believe that through and through, like to my soul. I actually believe this whole concept and this idea that, the best days of our people are actually in front of us and not behind us. And that's something that I think about every single day when I watch my kids go out the door, or do the work that I do here at NDN Collective.
And I know that I kind of hold you up from your family, so thank you for talking to me right now. I think we're gonna take some questions from the chat. I can see them kind of flying up here, and we'll kind of let's answer a few questions, and then I'll let you get back to your family if that's cool. And then we'll see people tomorrow. And I think that's in the chat, right? People are dropping links in the chat, so you can follow along of our plans for that. And so, let's see if I can get to the question. What kind of outcome? These are just questions from Facebook and different social media platforms. Somebody's asking, what kind of outcome are you expecting from the hearing?
What do I expect or
want? Whatever feels good. They ask us to expect, but
in a perfect situation, tomorrow, the judge hears the arguments in the case, sees that the prosecutor, in fact, has engaged in prosecutorial misconduct, in fact, has seen that my free speech rights were violated, in fact, sees that my rights to a speedy trial were violated, and therefore sees those as constitutional violations, which would be the grounds for the dismissal of all my charges. That would be the perfect thing. And to see me as a human being in the system and looking at just the laws of this whole situation, because there is actually enough stuff there for that to happen. Yep. I'll just say that we live in Western South Dakota in this system that has been highly racist. So I expect, my expectations are low. My expectations of what I probably think is going to happen tomorrow is that the judge will probably take it under advisement, which means that they probably won't make a decision tomorrow, and it'll be super anticlimactic. And then we'll be waiting a period of time in which we're waiting for the judge to make a decision. And maybe that is a good thing, maybe that's a bad thing, I don't know. I am cautiously optimistic, but either way, whether the judge makes that decision or not tomorrow, at any given time, the Minnehaha County Prosecutor's Office, who's now taking the lead in this case, can make the decision, and the state can make the decision to drop the charges because they're frivolous and that this is, an over prosecution from the get-go. And if the state makes that decision to do that, that's a victory. Any charges being dropped in this process is a victory. And so that's my hope. That's my hope to see what happens tomorrow in the days to come. But I'm a Native person who's been, fighting the system since 1492, right, just like every other Native person across this country. So do I absolutely think I'm going to get justice tomorrow? It's hard to say that. It's hard to say that's going to happen. But that's kind of what could happen. There's a variety of different outcomes, but most likely that's kind of what I think.
Yeah, I just wanted to share, just so people understand what these things are like too, because some folks haven't been in the system or haven't, haven't experienced this. Like I was arrested once in a tree when I was covering an action, and I thought I was there all legally. The police came up and told me I was trespassing, so I was like, oh, I didn't know that. I'm gonna leave, and they're like, cool. Came down the tree, and then he's like, no, I'm gonna arrest you, which was super illegal, right? They advised me I was trespassing. I didn't know that time, and I was gonna then leave, and I stated it. They recorded me saying this. Months later, I get a phone call, and they're like, hey, how's it going? This is the prosecutor. We're just looking over your case. And like, yeah, it doesn't look like we really can win this case, you know? And I was like, oh, okay. It's like, yeah, so we're thinking we'll dismiss these charges because it's just like based on what happened, it doesn't really look like we can win. And so I was wondering how you feel about that. And I was like, that sounds good. And they're like, cool. All you got to do is send us $50. And I was like, what? It's like, you're telling me that I didn't do anything illegal. You're telling me that that you can't prosecute to win, but then you're also telling me in order for my case to be dropped, I got to give you money. And they're like, yeah, court fees. And I was like, what? And that's how that worked out. Like, and this just so people know, like that they're always trying to prosecute you and that they can't. The deals are weird. They change them. They give you these offers. Like I was going to go to court over that. I was like, no, I'm showing up. Like, no, let's just do it. But I was like on the other side of the country, so I didn't do it. But just to give you an idea, like these things change. They're changing the rules under you, and they're always doing this stuff. Yeah, it was wild. A couple more questions. I know that I'm keeping you from the fam. Somebody's asking, like, how do you manage any stress you have with your case while running this ecosystem or being part of this ecosystem and being also an active participant in your community? Like, how do you manage all that stress? If there's stress.
I think for me, I think a big part of it is prayer. I don't know much other things, but I know that the Lakota the Lakota way of life is the thing that grounds me. And so going into Inipi, praying, humbling myself and praying in that way and living that way of life, that's the thing that rejuvenates me, I know that there's all these different things of how people, manage stress, but for me, that's probably the number one thing is to lean into my way of life and surrender myself to the Creator, because I really believe that the Creator is going to help alleviate the things, that are happening inside of us. And I always think about it this way, in Lakota way of life, we have tricksters, we have iktomis and tricksters, and a lot of times there is distractions that is put before us. And to me, this whole entire case in many ways are trying to distract me from the actual work that I intended to do. Mm-hmm. Well, what I did is take this case and turn it into a spear to have it be a catalyst for the actual work that we're trying to do for our communities and for our people. Because as we're doing this work, we have to be dismantling at the same time. And so when you change your mind frame around that entirely and you stay dedicated to your identity, your way of prayer that grounds yourself, that's what I've been doing, and that's what's been working for me.
All right, I have one more question, I think, and then maybe we'll go. And thank you for that. And yeah, prayer is really center and sort of like here, at least, we really hold that, and everyone sort of shares how they pray, and it's sort of an amazing experience too. I don't know if people understand. Like we're in meetings together, and the amount of different Indigenous languages is mind blowing. Like I'm just saying that like there's so many people from different territories in this ecosystem, and it's just amazing to be part of and to be able to be there and just listen to all those languages of those places, and I don't know. Oof, it's wild. People are asking what are some actions we can take to support? Like how can people support you as we go through this and us?
I think I was trying to figure this out today, because what do we do for a call to action? And right now, the office that has the ability to drop these charges is actually the Minnehaha County Prosecutor's Office or Minnehaha County State's Attorney's Office. And so I'm going to share their number right here, 605-367-4226. Again, this is the Minnehaha Haha County State's Attorney's Office, and their number is 605-367-4226. And if people call that number saying that in in this the case against Nick Tilsen, if it can be dropped due to prosecutorial misconduct, due to free speech violation, due to right to a speedy trial, and ask that these charges be dropped and that people take organic phone calls, I think that helps. That's one way that people can try to support, because the more pressure that we put on them and realize that the discourse against something like this is probably the better. I think that other folks, anybody who wants to, contribute to NDN Collective to help, legal fees ain't cheap. We got to pay the bill around here to have, lawyers that can continue to support us. And so that's another way that people can support. The other thing that I'd like to say, and I feel really well taken care of, to be quite honest. I feel like many people throughout this movement have showed up. So one way that I would like for people to show support is to send their support to some of the relatives that are experiencing over prosecution up at Line 3. And you can donate to them and support them. That is also one way, that for me, that I would be grateful for people to do. The other thing is, I'll be honest, I got stacks of letters in here, right here in my office. There's probably about 50 of them sitting here. These are all different letters. These are all different letters from brothers and sisters in all of the jails throughout South Dakota, and they need continued support too. And so being able to, send support to those that are actually currently incarcerated in the system is another way that, that I think is fundamental for people to support too. So, those are some of the things I would say that are, really important ways to show up and to help, and also keep following Indian Collective. Where our work is active, there's always some kind of call to action of that we're doing here. If you've gotten in touch with our work because of this case, follow our other work. Look at what we're doing in the land back movement. Look what we're doing in the education equity work and the racial equity work and the work that we're doing in Mniluzahan. Look at what we're doing in the climate justice team that we have going on. Look at all the awesome opportunities you can contribute, to the grant making dollars that we have by contributing to Indian Collective and supporting Native people all over the place. So these are all things and mechanisms and ways which people can support and help this growing movement.
Oh, I was going to mention that if people do call that number, be chill. I know a lot of people are probably having a lot of emotions and a lot of feelings, but it's just in their best interest to just be chill with. Don't call and scream at the other person on the line. Has happened in the past, and I appreciate the fire. But these things are all going to reflect on this case. And I know that when we go into a courtroom, our behavior in that courtroom reflects on how the judge is going to perceive what happens. In my past experience, and so let's be aware of that. And I just say that, but also and as you go out there to support where you're at, support where, to just know that when you're showing up to those courtrooms, they notice that. They notice people sitting there, and it's counted. And I've been in many courtrooms where the judge literally goes, I see you have a lot of people here to support you who are going to, keep you accountable to whatever happens, and it does help. And so let's just be aware of that. And yeah, I don't know if you have any questions for me, or I think that we're getting close to the end of the conversation.
Yeah, no, I just want to say thank you, Lorenzo, for all the stuff that you and Willie and Sarah and Jordan and Brandy and everybody throughout the comms team does. Marty, I could just go on and name all these people in the collective that have been, throwing down to make these things happen. I'm totally not a technology person. I'm barely even on any kind of social media. That's not what I do. So when I'm sitting here, I'm like, whoa, man, all the collective can broadcast and stuff. And so just like big shout outs to all your skills and for holding this space and providing a mic for us, you know, not just myself, but everybody else in the collective and really throughout Indian country, having a mic to be able to speak truth to power. So I appreciate you, Lorenzo, and all your hard work and sitting up here, you know, this evening. And again, you know, the prayers, I know that I'll be honest, like a lot of people throughout, you know, throughout my homelands, throughout this past year, have prayed for my family, have prayed for myself, have prayed for the collective, have prayed for the other land defenders in the ceremonies in the Inipi, and different people would reach out. And that made me feel really good, and it gave me strength and courage every step of the way. And so, you know, the continued prayers, and I just want to say wopila tanka chichapalo to everybody out there for the support in this. And we will prevail. We will win. We are fighting to win, and we're fighting to change the world, and we're going to keep on doing that. So appreciate each and every one of you as we do this work for our community and for our people.
And thank you so much for that. I'm gonna close this out, and then yeah, we'll call it a night. So thank you, everybody, again. Thanks for closing us out too. But I just want to say, like, one more reminder to folks to remember to like, follow, and share these feeds. I'm Lorenzo Serna. I was just holding this conversation, thankfully, with Nick. I know that we're gonna let you get back to your family, so I know we got you in here late. But thank you for taking this time, and thank you for all of you who have been following along this whole time. I know it's a lot, and I hope it's helpful, you know, and you're learning some steps that you can take in your community. And I want to encourage everyone to show up how you can wherever you're at. You know, like one of the important things I learned or was told or was taught before Standing Rock ever even occurred was the importance of just showing up and being counted. You know, and like maybe we don't have all the tools or we don't have all the technology, but we can still be counted in moments, and this showing up is enough, you know. So don't fret over not knowing everything right or not knowing the right steps. Just know that showing up to a place and being counted is enough. And so thank you for being here. Thanks for showing up. We'll be there tomorrow and for Nick, and we're going to be here for everyone else as well as we can, how we can, and keep supporting the people who are out there doing this work to change the world. You know, that's what I feel we're always doing. We're trying to change the world to be a place that's equitable, to be a place for everybody, to be a place where people aren't not counted, right? Because I think that's what this society does. It erases people, it disappears people, it disappears our poorest relatives, our poorest neighbors, and we have to recreate a world where we're all counted. And I think that's what we're trying to do here at the Indian Collective. That's what we're trying to do together with you all. And I think that's really where I'm empowered from to do. So thank you for being here. And talk to you soon. Bye.
Doksha.